Look at that, a real camera. Amazing what it'll do. Welcome back to Office Randomnicities. Let's talk tape. In the last video, we talked about, very sporadically, what the process looks like for taking your old DV footage from your consumer camcorder and transferring it into something that your computer can see. So what I want to do is explain specifically how to use this particular machine with your miniDV tapes or your DV cam tapes, whichever have you. This is a dual format machine. This is probably one of my favorite machines that I have. It's a DSR-1500a, a miniDV/DV, as well as DV cam video tape recorder. That's right, this is a VTR. We're in Sony land now, or just the professional AV world. The beautiful thing about this is that Sony made, I don't know, like 18 different versions of this machine. So anything from the little baby DSR-20 all the way up to the big old 2500. I think it's a 2500. I don't know. I know it's an 1800 is one of the bigger ones. That's a big, like 4U rack mount one, maybe even 5. It's big. Everything I talk about here is going to more or less translate into the other machines as well. So whatever I discuss here will by and large be the same. Next video, we're going to be looking at this beautiful thing. This is my DSR-1500a, and this is actually what I ended up using to record my last video, which is why it looked like it was an SD, because it was. So first we're going to look at the front. We're going to discuss the controls and how to use it. We're going to dive into the menu as well to see what kind of settings you can change. Then we're going to turn it around and look at the back and see how the I/O all works, because that's rather important, and there's a couple of small quirks that you need to know about these particular machines at least to get them running correctly. The nice thing is, now that we're in the professional AV world, there's no proprietary power brick or barrel adapter. They all use this 3-pin IEC power connector, which is great. Now, what you can't hear right now, because I have a gate on this mic, is the noise coming out of this thing. Trust me, it would be irritating. There's a single fan in here that is an 80mm thin type, and it's loud. So the very first thing I want to talk about with this front panel is this little switch right here. This is a local remote switch. What does that mean? What you need to understand about these machines is that they weren't designed to sit on somebody's desk and actually use the controls on the front. Those were secondary. What they were really meant to do is to plug a remote into in the back here and then run that to somebody's editing desk, where it could be then used and viewed with a ton of different monitors. That's what these were designed to do, especially the rack mount versions. So I'm going to put some B-roll in here, but to be honest, I don't know what I'm doing, so this may or may not work. But essentially what you're looking at are the standard controls for the machine, and indeed any other machine that normally uses tape. You have fast forward, rewind, play, stop, and record. Something important to note is that when you do decide to record, and we'll talk about how to do that in a minute, is you have to use the record button in conjunction with play. This is a safety feature. Make sure you don't accidentally record over something important. There's another safety feature, but believe me, we'll talk about that later. On the left, you'll see the volume dial controls for your record and your playback. This is important because when you adjust these knobs, you're adjusting what you're listening to in each ear. That's in the record mode and in the playback mode. When it's in record, you are actually changing the adjustment level for the channels that come into the VTR. When it's in playback, you're adjusting which ear hears what in your headphones and the main mix. Underneath that, speaking of headphones, you can see the 1/4-inch jack. Oops. Now, this is a TRS adapter. At least that's what I remember, because I haven't dealt with these in quite a while. But what I do know is, you notice how there's 2 black rings on here. From my understanding, that's TR versus TRS if you had 1 or 2 bands. If you only had 1 band on this, you would only be hearing mono. So if you get one of these adapters and you want to listen via 3.5 millimeter headphones, make sure there's 2 bands. So now let's start talking about the controls on the bottom underneath the screen. So you have 2 buttons here on the left that aren't part of your video group for your audio. You have a monitor switch and a channel select switch. The monitor select switch is designed for you to pick whether you want to listen to channel 1, channel 2, or both, or channel 3, channel 4, or both. Notice how there's only 2 meters. That's what the second switch is for. That switch is designed for you to cycle between channels 1 and channels 3 and 4. You'll also notice on the I/O in the back later that there are dedicated ports for these channels. To the right of those, you'll see the switches for your video inputs. Now you'll notice that mine has a blinking light saying iLink because there is nothing plugged into it right now. This is the main and only digital interface that's designed to communicate over FireWire, which is another problem I'll discuss later. Something important to note is that when I switch all of these buttons, you'll notice it really doesn't do anything for me except for the iLink button, because my particular machine does not have the accessory boards in them in order to adopt those particular inputs and outputs. As it sits, my particular machine can only have a reference in and out video, timecode in and out, as well as S-video, composite, or component out. Normally with these machines, if they're outfitted well enough, you could take in SDI as well as out SDI, or in analog. That's probably the big one that a lot of people mostly will care about. But for me though, because I'm an archivist and a perfectionist, let's be perfectly reasonable here, I realistically only care about the iLink port, which is IEEE 1394 or FireWire. The hard part about this port, and indeed this format, is that it mainly only talks over AVI files and over FireWire. The only exception is if you have a Thunderbolt 2 capable port, which again is only offered on older computers, which is what I discussed in my last video. It's a pain, so a lot of people will just prefer to digitize their tapes over analog video instead. But there's something about these being particular tapes that are designed to record in but there's something about these particular tapes that irks me when I do that, because they are digital. They're designed to be. They're just weird physical media. So let's put a tape in, and you'll notice something. What you probably, again, didn't hear is the loading mechanism. It took it a second, but it does wrap the tape around a drum. We're rocking old school here, folks. So one of the fun things you'll see is that there's a door or a little, hey, watch out window that pops up that's yellow, warning you that there's a tape inside. From here, all the controls are the same as I described earlier. There's really nothing fancy about it. But what's interesting is, like I said, this is technically a dual format in terms of both codec and size. That's the wrong side. So when you put a bigger tape in, what happens is there's a mechanism in there that has to wide open up. So what happens when you put a bigger tape in is that a mechanism inside has to adjust in order to accept the bigger tape that is about 3 to 4 times the size. Now we're going to talk about the menu a little bit, and this is kind of where it gets convoluted, because there's actually two. There's 2 very important settings in here that you absolutely must know about if you want to use this machine properly, and that is the interface and the recording format menu. The interface section allows you to change what the output back here is going to be, depending on your accessory board that's going to match what your front panel input is going to be. Now you can mix and match this all you want. You could have SDI input that's outputting to composite. It's disgusting, but you could do it. You could have component in, you could send component out. But if you plug something in back here, let's say you want to get composite out of it, but you accidentally select component, which is YRB for some reason in Sony land. These were very early days for component. You're going to get this weird picture that's purely green. That's because the composite output back here is the same as the Y output back here, which I believe is chroma. The other important part of this front menu is the record format. These are DV cam tapes. Now, the actual tape itself doesn't matter. It's the format that was recorded to it. Most consumer grade camcorders record in DV, not DV cam. So if you want to play it back as well as record to it in the original DV, your record format in this menu needs to be the same. Otherwise, you're going to get some weird artifacts at best or absolutely nothing at worst. It's a slightly better codec with better color rendering, not really resolution. The resolution is the same. You're dealing with 480i here. That's the bottom line. So let's flip it off now because the noise is getting irritating. Let's spin it around and take a look at the I/O on the back. What you are now looking at is the simple version of this board. So we'll start from right and go to left. The most interesting thing here, at least to me, is the FireWire port or the iLink. Now, when communicating with a computer, you have to make sure that you have the right software that's going to talk to this thing. The way you know it's working correctly is that front blinking light is going to turn to solid. That's how you know that this machine is talking to your computer correctly, at least digitally. Analog doesn't matter. A signal path is a signal path. It doesn't have to do any weird handshaking in order for it to spit out signal. It just does it. Speaking of which, when we start moving over, we'll see the YPBPR, which is what I call it because I'm normal. No, I'm not. I'm an absolute nerd. That's your component. The Y in the middle is going to be, the middle, not the end. The Y on the end of that section is going to be your composite. Basically, mix and matching these three ports is going to give you a different variant of either S-video, composite, or component. Component if you use all three. On the far left, you're going to see your reference video. I don't really know what that is. I know you use a reference monitor for it, but that's about it. That's the best of my knowledge because I don't use this machine for that. I'm not a master editor. I just take stuff I like and throw it onto tape. Underneath it, you'll see the time code input and output, which is kind of important if, again, you're a master editor and you make master tapes, but not really something that's important to me and or most of you. By the way, if you're wondering what the actual difference is between these tapes, it's time. That's it. This is a 12-minute tape. This is a 3-hour tape. And yes, you can get shorter in the big ones and longer with the small ones. It just kind of varies which ones that you buy. Something to be aware of, though, is normally the consumer variants of this are an hour long. There are DV cam tapes that have the same length of tape in them, yes. But DV cam, the codec itself, runs the tapes a little bit faster. This means that you basically get a 30% reduction in time when you record on DV cam. This is 12 minutes with DV cam. So if I were to change it to DV, that would give me probably 18 minutes, which means on a 3-hour tape like this, I'd get, an extra hour? Is that right? I don't know. Something similar like that. Lastly, probably one of the most important things. I discussed this in my last video, but there's something you absolutely need to know if you're going to be doing this digitally over FireWire. If you plan on taking your tapes and throwing them into your computer for archiving purposes, like the whole point of this conversation right now is, you have to do one thing, and that is flip the save record switch to save. If you do not do this, your deck will never communicate properly and send the video to your computer to be streamed. I don't know why, but that's what Sony decided to do. The worst part is it's mentioned nowhere in any manual, neither the service manual or operator's manual that I've seen. That being said, if you want to record back to this tape, you got to flip the switch back. You'll notice on the bottom that there's a DB9 looking serial port. That's designed for the remote. Now, I personally have an RM450 that I'll be showing off next time because it's, well, frankly, it's just fun. And that's going to live right here on my desk when I eventually get it figured out. I hope this was helpful. I know that these machines are very complicated. They were not designed to ever be in consumers' hands, though many engineers probably knew that they eventually would be. Maybe that's why some things are a little more intuitive than others. But that's it. That's all I got.